Okay, today we're going to continue in the series that we've been covering, and that series is called Who Are We? And in the series, we were covering a couple of universal laws, and one of the laws that we're covering in this is the law of correspondence, which is as above, so below, as within, so without. And the law of perpetual transmutation of energy. And of course, the energy of our Father is always able to transform the individual. The scripture that tells us, be transformed by the renewing of our hearts and our minds. This is actually talking about overcoming our lower selves, that we could be integrating into the ability to be one with our Father once again. So we have this law of the perpetual transmutation of energy, and if we understand this energy as the spirit of our Father, that's the only spirit that there is, that's the only spirit that there ever was, that is the spirit that gave life into the only begotten Son, because life was in the Father already, and the Spirit imparted life to the only begotten Son. The only begotten Son is actually the creation of everything. That's where everything is in, everything is put out of this, and the very same pattern that is in that Father, Son, Holy Spirit, that's the very same pattern that is in every world, and it's actually being replicated through everything that you see coming down to our world today, in the physical world and a physical world in the earth. But there's not only a physical world, and the earth is not only the physical. It's not the only physical world. So there's a lot in the Father's house. There are many mansions, many dimensions, many densities inside of those dimensions, many sub-densities in those densities, and sub-densities is infinite. That's what Yahshua understood when he says, if it was not so, I would have told you, because he understood what this is all about. And he understood that this energy that the Father has is a creative energy. And he understood who he was. That's why he says, Father, give me the power that I had before the foundation of the earth, or give me the glory that I had before the foundation of the earth. Now, we have to understand this, or think about something. If we were ordained with Messiah before everything began, we got to think of what was really going on. We got to think of really who are we that we're going to be preordained with Messiah before the world. And if he had a glory, where do we play a part in that glory? If he's going to go back to where he was, who were we? We got to think about that we are preordained with this entity, or this individual that had something in him and walked in a vessel in the earth. We got to think of what that individual was, or who that individual is. And then when you think about it, if you are preordained, well, who are you? Who am I? So, as we looked into this, we looked at the prodigal son. And the prodigal son is actually found in Luke 15, and we just want to kind of recap a little bit to catch back up to where we are, or where we left off at. So Luke 15 is actually what we're talking about last week. And we'll go back there and continue. And in Luke 15, we were reading the parable of the prodigal son, which starts in Luke 15 and verse 11. And in that, we see that there was a certain man who had two sons. And of course, we have to look at it as there's a man, and that man has two children. So there's the man and two children. Okay, so we're looking at something here. It's not only the man, there's three that's involved here. Three individuals that's in here. But these three, they're one family. There's one family. And Then now the youngest of them said to his father, Father, give me a portion of the property, or give me the portion of the property which is coming to me. So the portion of the property that is coming to him is something that is his right, it's his inheritance. So he asking for this, his inheritance. So the father divided the inheritance between them. So this is something that now the father is saying, okay, you have this son, and notice it's an inheritance from the father. Now think of the father, your father, if you're going to look at it in this manner, think of your father, who your father is. And your father is giving you a portion, okay? And in this portion that he's given you, it is the inheritance that is the father's. Now think of who your father is, but he's given the prodigal son, the one who's going to leave, an inheritance. The inheritance. Well, of course, we know the prodigal son went and he squandered that inheritance. In other words, lost it. Lost what the father had given him. So we look at Revelation, or last week we looked at Revelations 12:4. And in Revelations 12:4, we saw that the dragon drew 1/3 of the sons of the stars. 1/3. Now the stars are all one family, but 1/3 of the stars were drawn by the tail. The tail did draw the sin. Now the way we usually look at this is a really bad and negative thing that is happening, but there was something that was taking place, which we're not going to go into in this message, that those who came to this earth, or those who were in this earth and are doing certain things, they came to assist, and that's the instructions that they had been given. And with that instruction to assist, they had the power or the inheritance of the father until they squandered it. So they still had it. Now we move on in the prodigal son, and if we go to Numbers, we're going to keep our place in Luke. Of course, sooner or later we're going to come back there. Not sure when, but we will. If we go to Numbers, Moshe now received the law from Yahweh. Now we've always spoke about on how Moshe received the law and how Moshe gave the law. Moshe received something that he saw and he understood. And he understood it in a basic form. He saw it in a basic form. The law, what it's all about. However, he wrote this in a book, and in the book, it's veiled. And we've gone over this, and we've seen it. It's all through the scriptures that the people didn't understand what Moshe actually gave. That's why, even in Yahshua's days, Yahshua said they were blind. In Shaul's days, Shaul said that there was a veil. Even today, in his time, there's a veil. Well, today that we speak to, there is a veil. And the veil is being lifted, but the veil is only lifted when we look at Messiah's teachings. This is when the veil starts to remove. And this is when we start seeing what Moshe actually knew and what he was doing to save these individuals who would be a pattern of something that was above, that was going to show those in the world, in the earth here, how to receive the blessings of the Supreme Father. Because if they did what Moshe was saying, it would have opened up to them sooner or later. But they fell even from that. And people that looked at them and been, man, these guys are great. These guys have done wonders. What other creator do you have like these guys right here? It was supposed to be in that manner. However, Israel didn't do certain things because the hardness of their hearts, because the light could not shine in. That which would show the way behind the veil, which is light, is called the menorah in a symbolic term. That which would show the way behind into the most holy place, they couldn't get with that. They couldn't even get into the holy place in order to get into the most holy place. So it was really cut off from the average individual. So in Numbers 18, we look in verse 20. It says, Then Yahweh said to Aaron,
You shall have no inheritance in their land, nor shall you have any portion. Any portion. Remember, there's a portion that was being given to the children, to that child. Give me my portion so I could go. But this is an inheritance. Okay? So it says, you shall have no inheritance in their land, nor shall you have no portion among them. I, the Father, am your portion. I am your inheritance. The same thing. Because this is actually what Moshe saw. He understood this. And he understood now that those who were going to receive the Father, the power of the Father, they couldn't have a portion with the average. Because their duty was going to be to bring forth the light. The power of the Father. That which the Father was. Yahweh is in the light that no man can approach, or you can't approach that light while you're in the form of just the man, a man. There's no approaching that light, but you can approach that light outside of this man thing, okay? This vessel that we have. So he goes an inheritance. Those who were going to join themselves to the Father, they were going to have this inheritance. They would be called the sons of Yahweh because they would be building up the people with the name of Yahweh. This is what the priest does. The priest put the priestly blessing upon the people. Well, all that really is bringing the people to a point that the Father is going to be with them and deal with them in every kind of way. Join, attach to them, and somehow after a while live and sup in them. This is actually what the priestly blessing will do. Okay, so now we're looking at this here, and we go to verse 19. I'm sorry, verse 21. It says, see, I give the children of Levi all the tithe, the tenth, in Israel as their inheritance, in return for the work they perform and do while serving at the tent of meeting. This is where their ministry were. This is where everybody came with their problem. So this is the work that they did. And for the work that they did, he gave them the tithe. Now the tithe is a tenth. And we went into the Hebrew letters and we look at the 10th letter in the Hebrew letter. It's actually Yod. Yod, a tenth. As in father. Yod, He, Wah, He. Yod. So this Yod, they would receive the Spirit of the Father, or the portion. This is what, so they're going to get a tenth, which is the portion that the Father is giving them, because this portion that they're receiving is the Father. Really, that's what it is. They're receiving the Yod. That's the tenth that they're receiving during this time. Now, we moved on, and we went and we looked at Romans 10, 4 through 8. And we looked at Deuteronomy 30, 12, and 13. And in those scriptures, we were looking at the fact that Moshe, when he dealt with the children of Israel, he said, this law that I'm giving you here today is not far or beyond your reach. And he went forth and he says, it's not over there, it's not down there, it's not too far. He says, it is with you and it is in your heart. It is in your midst. This law that I'm giving you. Now Shaul came later and spoke the same thing. Okay? Now, if we go over to Colossians, we're going to see what is in us, because this is a mystery that Shaul said that there was. But this mystery was in the law. It was in that very part of the law that Moshe spoke of and said, this law is in you. This is the Father. This is the scripture. It's already in you, and we have to wake up to it. So in Colossians chapter 1, if we look at verse, let's look at verse 26. Okay? Here Shaul says, it says, the great secret, so he's talking about a secret. Now Moshe had this secret too. But Moshe didn't let the secret straight out, because Moshe had to veil it. That's why it was a secret. If he spoke it straight out, it wouldn't have been a secret. And if he could have spoken it out, it would not have been a secret. But because of the hardness of everyone's heart, he had to veil it, and therefore it was a secret. And so it had been there for ages until Shaul, who was taught by Yeshua himself. Yeah, Yeshua, yes, Yeshua is here. Yeshua is here. I know, according to how we interpret it, Yeshua is not here. Yeshua is here, and he's simply not in the same density that we are. But he interacts because he can. He can. And he never said that he was going to be gone away from us. As a matter of fact, he said, I'm with you till the end. He said that. He said, lo, I'm with you. If he's going to be with you, that means he is here. He's with us. So here we go. The great secret, which has been hidden from ages and from generations. Okay, and it was in the law, but it was also hidden so people couldn't see it. But now has been revealed to who? His saints. It's not going to be revealed to anyone. And so when you see it or you're hearing it right now, feel great that Yahweh is giving us something here. Because Yahweh is determining that you are saints. That's why it's revealed to you in the first place. It's not going to be revealed to you unless, that's what he's saying, it's been revealed to the saints. So there's something that the saints got to do. They can't just sit on their rumps because they have to get up and play that role, the same role that Levi played under the Levitical priesthood. They have to play the very same role when they wake up to see who they are. Because Yahweh is their inheritance when they do what? When they do the work at the tent of meetings, which is serve the people. The tent of meetings where everyone have their issues, but if someone has an issue, whatever the case is, and you could help them with that, this is what you do. And Yahweh gives you a tenth for that righteousness. And that tenth is the spirit of your Father. You start getting that. That's why our scripture tells us that those who do what Messiah says, he gives them the spirit. He said, it's great for me to go, okay, so I could give you this thing here that has been bequeathed to me, and I'm going to give it to you. This thing that he's talking about is the Spirit. The same Spirit that he had, the same Spirit that the Father gives, and it's not like everyone don't have a portion of that Spirit, but we have fallen, we have squandered things, and we don't know. Remember, when the prodigal son came to himself, he decided to return. A lot of us haven't come to ourselves yet. A lot of us are still in that area that we're still sleeping. When we wake up, then we start making the trek back to our Father. This is what we're talking about here. So we go on now. It's revealed to the saints, to whom Yahweh willed to make known what are the riches of the glory of the great secret. Great secret, so it's not openly known, among the Gentiles, which is Messiah in you, the hope of glory. This is in you. That which Moshe was given was always in the people. The people had to wake up to it. And that which Moshe gave them, which their hearts were hardened to, was there to hold them until they would actually start to wake up. Because when Messiah would come, Messiah is the morning star. He's the one who brings you out of the darkness, okay, or under the covering of the moonlight, because the moonlight is symbolic of leading you through your darkness. Moshe was a symbol of leading you through your darkness until the day broke. That's why Yahshua is the morning star. If you come to the morning star, then you start to see. Because you're not walking in darkness anymore. He's a light that came for everyone to see. And this is what we have to make sure we do. So in this, the veil is removed, and the veil is the darkness. Also, the veil, for us, really what it is the flesh. So we have to know how to look at things beyond the influences of the flesh. Now, our scripture tells us how to do that, but we're not going to get into that today. We just want to find out who we are. And actually, when we get to that, then we are going to know with the innate power that's there. And if we deal with that in the right way, then we know that 10th is going to be coming, which is the spirit of our Father is going to be interlocked, and you're going to start waking up. Now, in verse 28, it says, him we preach. Who? They're not preaching Moshe here. They're preaching Messiah. Messiah, which is already in you. They're trying to wake the folks up to Messiah. Moshe already laid down the law and said it's in that. And he said the one who is coming, that one you ought to listen to, or you're not going to get beyond this right here. So he says, him we preach. And you got to do the same thing. That doesn't mean that you're going to throw Moshe out, but Moshe is incomplete. And we have to know that Moshe is in part. And when that which is perfect comes, that which is in part is going to move aside because it's supposed to. Now, not everything in Moshe has come to completion. So everything in Moshe is not going to be moved. But that which is fulfilled, it's going to be moved to the side. And it's supposed to. It's no offense to Moshe. It's no offense to the Father. It's no offense to anyone who understands. It's simply a time that you wake up. And when you wake up and you realize this is what Moshe was saying, now I understand. This is what Moshe put that there. But now, when that which is perfect comes, that which is in part, which is a pattern, now you're going to the truth. Those things, you simply are going to make room for the truth. So him we preach, warning every man and teaching every man in all wisdom, that we may present every man, not the Israelites, every man, because who is this to? The Gentiles. The Gentiles, the secret of the message to the Gentiles is that Messiah is in them. Just like Moshe told the children of Israel, this is in you. It's Messiah. It's the power to save you. That's what Messiah is, the Savior. Messiah has the power to save you. That which Moshe was trying to give the children of Israel was the power to save them. What power is that? The Spirit of the Father. It's in you. It's in everyone. We have to wake up to it. So he says, this is so we want to present every man perfect as Messiah was perfect. That's what we want to do. To get them to live and function just as this individual right here. Now, if we go over to Romans 8, let's go to Romans 8, verse 14 real quick. Romans 8, we're not going to stay there very long. Romans 8, and let's look at verse 14. Okay, verse 14. It says, for as many as are led by the Spirit, this is the Spirit that we're talking about here. This is the 10th. The 10th, this is what is in you. This is your scripture. Okay, this is what's going to come that's going to show you what is perfect, and then you're going to have to put aside or make room in your consciousness or in your awareness for that which is in part when that Spirit comes. For as many as live by the Spirit of Yahweh, they are sons of Yahweh. They are the builders of Yahweh's name. They're the ones who are helping their brother. They're the ones who stand before the tent of meetings because their inheritance is the Father. That's why they're sons. They have the Father in them, and they have that Spirit that they're giving out. Okay? And they are reflecting that in their activity day by day. For you did not receive the spirit of bondage, again, to fear or doubt, but you received the spirit of adoption, adopted into the Father. How are you adopted into the Father? We are adopted into the Father through the only begotten Son. Because we're all in the only begotten Son. The only begotten Son has the Spirit that the Father gave him, and all of that, Father, Son, Holy Spirit, that is Yahweh. That is Yahweh. But in the Son, we could cry, Abba, Father, because that's how we are adopted into him. Now Yahshua received that very same Spirit, the Son. He was one. Right back. He went right back to what he was. He was already that. And so he went back. But he went back after he showed us the way back. Because he said, the way you know. He said, the way I go, you know. You know. And at a certain time, you're going to have the very same power to do it. As a matter of fact, you guys are receiving that power already. It's happening. That's why your senses, you find your senses, you're waking up to this, you're waking up to that. The things are heightening. Your smell is heightening. The things that you're feeling around you is heightening. You know, you find yourself in a zone that you're seeing another dimension. That's why these things are happening to you. You know, you get around people, you can feel their energy. These things are happening because you're waking up. It wasn't there 5 years ago, but it's there now. So here we are in Romans 8. So it says here in verse 16, Yahweh's Spirit itself testifies with our spirit, because you're adopted into it, you're integrated into it, you have done certain things, and that has come and made it home into you. Okay, this is what we're talking about. And we are the children of Yahweh. A son of Yahweh is a child of Yahweh, and all of the creation are children of Yahweh. But those who are going to build the family name, they are not just children, but they are sons. But every man, we want to present every man, because every man is a child of Yahweh. That's why you have to look at your brother in a whole different manner. You have to look at those who are outside here in a whole different manner, because they are captives. They're captives. They have moved and they have gone to another land and they have squandered their inheritance, lost it. And we have to see this. So if you're going to be a savior, we have to understand that there are issues that these individuals have, and we have to have compassion and mercy, because they don't know what they're doing. That's why when the prodigal son came to his senses, but they haven't come to that. If you know that, we have to forgive them, and forgive them always. Unconditional forgiveness, because they don't know. Now you understand why Yeshua was able to be on a stake, being killed by these same folks, and he was able to say, Father, forgive them, because they don't know what they do, because they haven't come to their senses. They're the prodigal son that has fallen and hasn't come to his senses to return to his father yet. This is what we're talking about. So in verse 17 now. And if children, look at this, then heirs. Heirs of what? Heirs of what? Heirs of Yahweh. Heirs of the Spirit. Heirs of the inheritance. Heirs of the portion that the prodigal son received. Heirs. And joint heirs with Messiah, because or Yeshua, because he's part of it too. Since we suffer with him, in order that we may also be glorified with him. Now, what happened? Why did he suffer? He came into the earth, guys, and he was showing light to men. Men didn't like the light, so they went against him, because they didn't want to have anything to do with it. Well, those who wake up, guess what they do? Remember, we preach him. That means they are going to speak of the light. Well, others ain't going to like it then either, so they're going to suffer like Messiah. Because that's what men do in darkness. They won't give you the opportunity to teach them. They're going to tell you, hey, listen here, you don't tell me all this stuff right here. Why don't you stop beating around the bush and tell me? Well, they want you to tell me, but they won't be quiet long enough to hear you, because they want it all out there all at once. And so they'll be destroyed. They want it all at once because they think they know. And this is how they acted with the prophets. This is how they acted with Messiah. This is how they acted with the apostles. And they ended up killing most of them. But whether they killed them or not, all they really want to do is stop the message of the light from penetrating through to those who they have control over their minds. Because they lock the minds of men. So he says, joint heirs with Yeshua, since we suffer with him, in order that we may be glorified with him when we do the work at the tent of meetings. And you get something in exchange for what you do at the tent of meetings. What do you get? You get a tithe. You get the tenth. The tenth is the power of your Father, the Spirit of your Father, which Yahshua said he will give you if you do the very same thing. But not what Moshe said to do at the altar, sacrificing animals, not that. If you preach what Messiah said, you ain't got to get on a soapbox and start doing it. All you got to do is be it. Learn it, be an example to other people with it. So we move on here a little further. We're talking about the prodigal son. And let's go back over to Luke. Okay, Luke chapter 15. In Luke chapter 15, we look a little further. And here, in verse 13, because we already read the first two verses. In verse 13, it says, then, not many days after he got his inheritance, okay, the younger son gathered everything together, journeyed into a distant land. Distant land. Now, a land, we've already talked about what a land is. Okay, it's an influence. Now, we know an influence in the United States, laws give an influence to you or the people. You got an influence if you live in that land. If you go to Japan, there's a whole different influence, and that's land. But there are different influences too. Let's stop looking at this as just earthly, but let's look at it as you're moving from higher awareness, as in 10th dimension, coming down. Let's look at it as something like that. Or just look at it as you're coming from the third heavens, where you know what the scripture is talking about, okay? And you're coming down to the earth. So he's traveling to a distant land, and there squandered his property, the inheritance, with riotous living. And this is what the world does. The world lives riotously. So in the land that he went to, this is what they do. And in there, he became like them. He fell. He fell. The one son that was part of a family of 3 fell. 1/3 of that family fell. This is what we have right here. So we're looking at that right now. He's dealing with riotous living. Now let's go over to 2 Corinthians. Hold your place there in Luke again, because we're going to come back to that later, at least hopefully. So let's go over to 2 Corinthians 12. And in 2 Corinthians 12, let's look at, starting at verse 2. 12 and verse 2. This man says, more than 14 years ago, a man who was the Messiah was revealed to me. 14 years ago, that man was not in the earth. I shouldn't say he wasn't in the earth. He wasn't a physical body in the earth. But he was revealed to this man. And he was revealed to this man why this man could not see physically. And he couldn't see spiritually either at the time. He says, whether he was in his physical body or outside his physical body was not revealed to me, but he was there. And Shaul at this point know that you could be there, because you don't have to have a physical body to be there. But you're there. But he was there. Yahweh was doing the revealing. This man was taken up to the third heaven. Some of you guys have that. This one just says heavens, but it's the third heavens. So if you have a translation, because some of the book of Yahweh didn't take this out, the later versions took this out. But it should be there. Third heaven. So we know that there's a third heaven. Well, if there's a third heaven, guys, there's a second heaven, because you just don't jump to third heaven. There's a second heaven, and there's a first heaven, and there's that which is under heaven. Right? That's fair to assume. So now we have to remember what it says in Luke 15:13. He went to a distant land. So the Father, okay, this man was taken up to the third heaven to be with the Father. But before he fell, or man fell. So man fell from, let's say, the third heavens. There's more than that, but I will just keep it there for as far as we know, as far as the teachings are saying right now. So he left from the third heavens and he went to a distant land. And in that land, they were doing things riotously. In third heavens, there's none of that going on. No, we're not doing that there. You can't come through these doors doing that thing. But down there is where ego controls and lives and move people in the wrong direction, and everything is veiled. Can't see. So he's amongst the riotous people. These are people who live in darkness. That's why they live riotously. Because when there is no light coming in, the people are confused and they do certain things because they can't see right. So here we are. This individual is telling us here, Shaul is telling us that this man was in the third heavens. And this man was revealed to me, in verse 3. Whether he was in his physical body or apart from his physical body was not revealed to me. Yahweh was doing the revealing. This man was taken to the abode of Yahweh and heard unspoken words that were not possible for a man to speak. Because men can't go before that light. As a man, you have to go before that light outside of the vessel that is called the man. That's how you're going to grab this light. That men don't speak, because it can't function in men. It will mess him up. That's how much information it is. So much information, your nervous system will crash. Your computer motherboard will crash. Because it's not supposed to be among men. Anyway, let's go to Yochanan. Let's go over to Yochanan. Okay, so we have that we're looking at the fact that there are other dimensions and other densities. Okay, and if we don't believe that there are other dimensions and densities, then at least we could see it in the scriptures that there is a third heaven. And so it's fair to say there's a second and there's a first heaven, and then our scripture tells us that there is that which is under heaven. Because Yahweh says created heaven and earth. And he says to some people who did not do the right thing, he's going to cut their name off from under heaven. So we know that there's something under heaven too. So in Yochanan 20, let's look at verse 26. 26. Now, 8 days later, his disciples again were within, and Thomas was with them. What? How did he do that? And stood in the midst and said, "Peace be to you." Then he said to Thomas, "Reach out your finger here and see my hand, and reach out your hand and put it in my side, and do not be faithless, but believe." This is the biggest problem that we have. Faithless, and we lack belief because we have fear. We have fear that our Father will not do what he said he will do. And if you ask him for something, that he's going to give you something else. And he's not going to protect you. And so for this reason, we don't receive the light. Because when he sends the teacher, we reject them. And he sends them in different forms. He may send them as you, one of you guys going, or another person, whatever, but he would also send them, if you can receive it, as something that is not in a physical body. No different than Yahshua went to Shaul. He said he didn't know if he was in the physical form or not. Well, we already knew the man had died, so he wasn't in the physical form. We know that. So something can teach you that's not in the physical form. There's no need for you to be afraid of it. Test the spirit. Test all the spirits. See if they're from Yahweh. And it tells you how to do it. You don't have to be afraid. If you're asking your Father for truth and the right things, and he's getting ready to send it to you, but then you think there's a trap, something is tricking you. Well, don't ask him for anything then, because we're not going to believe him. We shouldn't be asking him for anything, because we don't want to believe. Now, so Thomas, he's dealing with Thomas here. Okay? And in verse 28 it says, then Thomas answered and said to him, my teacher, my king. Yahshua said to him, Thomas, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen, and yet they can believe. But they didn't see with the physical eyes. They know that they could send something from right here to Scandinavia. But if they think they need to get on an airplane and go there and do whatever needs to be done, they really don't believe. And the reason they don't believe is because they don't know who they are. They don't know who they are and what they're capable of doing. They don't know what they were doing before, and they don't know that it is given to them even now. But this flesh is your veil, and it is holding you back. It's holding us all back. But when you could rise above that, then we're going to be in a different place. Now let's go over to Acts chapter 8. Acts chapter 8. And let's look at verse 39. Acts chapter 8. Now we're just looking at the fact that there are different dimensions, different densities. Yahshua came in. He didn't do it like the physical man in the third dimensional world. So he was functioning on another dimension, in another density, right there amongst them. And he said he was going off, but he was going to be with them. Yes, right there, in another density, in another dimension. Because he proved it with Yahshua, not only with Yahshua, but he also came to Yachanan, the Revelator, and he dealt with him in the same manner. So Acts 8, let's go to verse 39. And when they had come up out of the water, the Spirit of Yahweh seized Philip. The Spirit of Yahweh seized Philip. Now the eunuch didn't see him again, but he went on his way rejoicing. And Philip was found at Azotus. He was found someplace else. That's just make it easy. And he traveled about preaching the message. What message, guys? The message they preach, which is what? Messiah. The message, the secret of the message, what is it? Messiah in you, waking you up to who you are. Messiah is in you, every one of us, because we have to deliver everyone. That's our job, to deliver everyone. We're not going to hold a shotgun to them and have them go. No, but we're going to speak the message, and our Father is going to do the revealing. Just as it will with Shaul. Yahweh was doing the revealing. We'll say with you, Yahweh is going to do the revealing. If this person is supposed to go, Yahweh's already going to do it. He's just using you to come. And if you're afraid because you don't think this, whatever, well, he's not going to use you for that one. And if you go to this one right here and he don't believe, he said, hey, dust your feet off and go to the next cat. And if you're amongst a group and you're telling this group, listen, guys, there's more to it than you think, and they say, no, it ain't, get out, and you leave the same way. But they refused to accept the fact that there is light. This is what it is. So in Acts 8:40, this guy went off. So the Spirit seized him, and he was found someplace else. Seized him, he was found someplace else. So something could happen that other densities, other dimensions work in you somehow, and whether it's time speeding up or time getting lost, These things can happen. Don't think they can't. Don't disbelieve it. Don't think that time travel is not possible. You know, a couple of years ago, they didn't know that you could turn on a TV from across the room. They didn't know that. A couple of years ago, they didn't know that you could get a letter without putting a stamp on it. They didn't know that. Which is called internet or email. A couple of years ago, they didn't know you could talk to somebody that's in the UK and see their face right there. So don't think that other technology is not possible, because then you won't be able to create them in the first place. Think about the person who was going to get their minds into the place that an email could be sent and you didn't need a stamp. If they didn't believe that it was possible, it wouldn't be happening. So one of the key components is to believe in the power of your Father, the perpetual transmutation of energy, knowledge, wisdom. Okay, let's go over to 1 Thessalonians. 1 Thessalonians, and let's look at chapter 4. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. We're just trying to get to a point so that we could actually see and understand that there are many mansions in your Father's house, many mansions, and they're called dimensions and densities. 1 Thessalonians chapter 4, and we're going to read verse 17. Okay, verse 16. Let's go to verse 16. It says, "For Yahshua himself will descend from heaven with a shout." This shout, guys, is what you call a command. A command. Everyone is not going to see this or hear this command, because everyone won't be open to that spirit that hears this command. There's a reason why Yahshua said, "My sheep hears my voice." In other words, they hear his shout, they hear his command, and they will not listen to another. That means another can't command them, because they're not going to listen to another. This is the shout. Okay? And when Yahshua comes, he comes separate from sinners. Why? Because sinners can't hear that shout. It doesn't mean he comes, he goes, "Ooh, you're bad, you're a sinner. No, don't touch me." That's not what it is. It has nothing to do with that. That spirit comes, and it could only be received by those who are not sinners. Those who are going to be redeemed from among men. Notice now, they're going to be redeemed from among men, just as he was redeemed from among men. But notice, they fell. They fell to the status of men. That's the only reason for them to be redeemed from among men. From among men. That's the only way for them to be redeemed in that manner. They lost something and came to be that which is among men. That's why your scripture said they were made a little lower than the Malachim. But he's going to glorify them, yes, and put them in charge of things, yes, of course, because they're going to be redeemed once again to the status of where they were in the first place. Just like Yeshua, who they were already preordained to be with before the world even began. People think that, oh, that was only in Yahweh's mind. Well, we're going to see. We're going to see. So it says, so you're going to descend with the voice. The voice. A voice could be many things, guys. One thing it could be are teachings. A voice could be knowledge. And notice where the voice is coming. It's the voice of the messenger, High Malik. That's what it is. the messenger is going to come from is someone who is not even in this dimension. The voice of the Malik Gadol, not even in this dimension, but is communicating with this dimension, and with the trumpet. This is the word, it's still a message, a trumpet, to gather the people together. That's what the trumpet was. Were you going to use it? One of the reasons now that you use it for is to gather the people together and to move them out. That's why the Feast of Yahweh on a full moon, which is always, you're going to find a full moon on the major feast days, Passover and Tabernacles. The full moon will always be on the high day of the first day of the official feast. It will always be there. That's why they blow the shofar on that day on the full moon, because there are no commands for it. There are no commands to blow the shofar on the full moon. The reason why they did it is because it was the first day of the feast. So they blew the shofar on the full moon. That's what it is. It's always going to be a full moon when that time happens. And that's the only reason why they blew the trumpet on the full moon. But there's no command for it. None. Moshe never said that. But he did tell them to gather the people together for the feast. So it says here, so something that is not of this dimension is going to be communicating with some people. With the trumpet of Yahweh, and if you look at this as just physical, we already lost it. Because we're back to the veil. And the dead in Messiah, remember we talked about the 2 wave loads? The dead in Messiah will be raised first. Those who are dead but lived that particular life, they're going to be raised first. Okay? Then we who are alive and remain will be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet Messiah in the air, and so we will ever be with Messiah. Now a lot of folks think this is a cloud thing. But the cloud is also a mystery. That's what clouds are about. It's a mystery. When there was smoke in the temple, thick smoke, this is what it is. It's a symbol of the mystery of Yahweh, the secrets of Yahweh. When there's a clear blue sky and then a cloud comes, you who are living in the earth can't see past the cloud to see through the clear blue sky. Okay? There's something that is there, but you can't see it. You have to be lifted up to see it. You have to be lifted up. You have to be in the cloud to see past the cloud, or above the cloud to see it. It's not just talking about what we're looking at here. But all I'm trying to establish here is that there are different dimensions and densities that is going to be dealing with you, or can deal with you. Now, we're going to look at Adam, or what was before Adam. Let's go to Genesis real quickly. Genesis and chapter 1, and let's look at verse 20. Chapter 1 and verse 20. Chapter 1 and verse 20. In verse 20 of Genesis 1, it says, Then Yahweh said, Let the waters bring forth an abundance of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the sky. So Yahweh created great sea creatures and every living thing that moves, with which the water abounded according to their kind. and every winged bird according to its kind. And Yahweh saw that this was fitting. And Yahweh blessed them, saying, notice now, he's blessing the creatures in the sea and blessing the creatures in the air. And he's blessing them in this manner. Be fruitful and multiply and fill the waters in the sea and let the birds multiply on the earth. Same thing. So the evening and the morning were the 5th day. But he blessed these guys right here and told them to be fruitful and multiply. Now let's go to the 6th day. Then Yahweh said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to its kind, cattle and creeping things and beasts of the earth, each according to its kind. And it was so. And Yahweh made the beast of the earth according to its kind, cattle according to its kind, and everything that creeps on the earth according to its kind. And Yahweh saw that it was right. On the same day, then Yahweh said, I will make man in my image, according to my likeness. They will have rulership over the fish of the sea, over the bird of the air, over the cattle, over all the earth, over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So Yahweh created man in his image. In his image he created in the image of Yahweh he created the man. Now in this book it says, then he created the woman from the man. But that's not what it said. It said he created them. He said he created them, male and female, he created them. So when he created them, at that point, he created them male and female. This was in the earth. This was in the earth, living, having its life. Now, verse 27. I want to read that, okay, other than the book that I have. He created male and female. He created them on the day that he created them. So, when those who were translating this book, they were in the place that, well, with the veil that was there, and they couldn't see themselves there. So they got into the book, and they looked at scholarly books, and based upon what they believed, they retranslated it. That's what they did. On the 6th day, this is something that happened, and those who were in the earth was going to be in the earth. This is what it was. But someone came in the earth after those guys were in the earth. Someone came after. Now, let's go over to Genesis 2. Genesis 2, listen to verse 7. It says, and Yahweh formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostril the breath of life, and man became a living being. Man became a living being. Now, if we go down further, we understand that there was a garden planted eastward in Eden, and there he put the man, not male and female, not them, he put the man whom he had formed. This is after the 6th day. Now, if we go a little further now, we go to verse 18. And Yahweh said, it is not satisfactory that this this one that he had created and told this one had a job to manage the garden. He came later on now, and he's saying to this one right here, it is not satisfactory that man should be alone. I will make him a helper suitable for him. And so what this one is doing, now you have woman that is coming. But in the day that Yahweh created this body, if you will, or the body that was originally man, he created male and female. And they were living in the earth, and they were doing their thing in the earth. Something happened in the earth, and this happened after those guys came in the earth. Now, don't take my word for it now, but we're going to continue going, and we're going to see some more. See? I'm just going to lay that part down for now. Now, let's go into Eob. Let's go to Eob, Job. Let's go to Job, and go to Job 38. Job 38. And we're going to look at verse 7. Let's look at verse 4 first. You know, Eob was having some issues here, and Yahweh was dealing with Eob. You know, it says out of the whirlwind. Okay? But the whirlwind in verse 38, if you look at verse 38, chapter 38 and verse 1, it says, then Yahweh answered Eob out of the whirlwind. Now, if you know what the whirlwind really was, it wasn't a whirlwind that just came. No, there was an argument that was going on for a very long time. And this argument, this was the whirlwind, things moving through people, they moved through and fro by the wind of doctrines or whatever. So Yahweh was dealing with Eob in this manner. Now, he goes now in verse 2, who is this that darkens and obscures counsel with words void of knowledge? Because Eob don't know. Now let's go down a little further. In verse 6. Now, no, I'm sorry, go to verse 4. Now, this is what he was doing with Eob. Where were you? Think of it. Where were you when I did these things here? And he's talking about where were you. He goes, where were you when the morning star, and go to verse 7. Where were you when the morning star sang together? Together as in one accord, because this is how they worked. The morning star worked together and sang. Do you know what the morning stars were doing? The morning stars are the sons of the Creator. This is who put all things together. When it says this one was, Yahweh created this, and he did it this way, and he did it that way, who do you think brought it forth? When Yahshua shouted, okay, when he's returning, and he said he shouted, and it was the voice of a great Malach. He shouted with this particular voice. This is a messenger that's doing it. This is someone who is working in this manner. Now, the morning stars, no different. They have the same relationship with the Father, and every star, have servants. We have a star in our solar system. And it gives life to everything in here. It gives life to whatever other planets that there is, whatever life that there's every life that's going to come from it, whether it's a life like this or another kind of life, it gives life to it. Because it's above it. It had to come before the planets. The planets didn't come and then it came. It's above it. Now, in the way that you're dealing with stars, you're not necessarily thinking about a physical star, but we're talking about stars as in the suns. Because this is what Yahweh is talking about. The morning stars, remember? Yahshua, the bright and morning star, not stars. So there are others who that makes it stars. Others who had great power, these are stars. The great and morning stars didn't come to us. the great morning star, singular, came to us. But Yahweh has many great morning stars. And these great morning stars sang together. They were doing things in one accord. And all the servants of Yahweh, those are the servants of the stars, shouted together, or shouted for joy in what they commanded. When they put together, it was pleasing. That's why Yahweh says, and he did this, and it was pleasing. They were pleased. They were joyful of what was being created. Yahweh didn't have them watching him doing everything. That's how the minds think. Oh, Yahweh's doing this, and all the stars are jumping on the side like, ooh, this is great, Yahweh. Oh, man, Yahweh, look at that. Do it again. Do it over there. They were shouting for joy because of what they were accomplishing through the great power, the 10th, the spirit that they were able to use to do this. All according to the blueprint. They were like RNA dealing with the DNA command, or the DNA print. And when Adam and Eve were in here, it was supposed to be the same kind of relationship that was supposed to be going on. Now, let's go over to, I'm trying to make a point here, so just bear with me while I try to make this point, because what I'm trying to show that there are different dimensions, different bodies all over the place, okay? So we could get past what we may think we are. So in 1 Corinthians, let's go to 1 Corinthians. Okay, 1 Corinthians. The stars shouted for joy. Yo, where were you when these stars were shouting for joy? Can you tell me? No, you didn't know. Okay? You didn't know. 1 Corinthians 15, let's look at verse 35. Verse 35. In verse 35. Now, in this book right here, it says the body in the resurrection. The resurrection. The resurrection are those who are going to, once again, meet Messiah where Messiah is. Now, Messiah fell, or should I say, man that Yahweh put in the earth to govern everything fell, and everybody else fell with him, and therefore met him where he was in his fallen state. Just like he did, they followed him down there and went there. Well, man rose. Resurrection, by the resurrection, man, it comes by man. And so one man went, and everyone who's going to follow him is going to follow him back out to where he's at. And it's not talking about a cloud. He's not going to be hanging on the cloud. This is something that everyone is not supposed to understand this thing because it's being spoken in the language of the mystery, the secret. So one descended, left his place, went into a far land, and then he left this far land when he came to his senses, returned to his father, and those who were part of his company, his body, whatever, they're doing the same thing. They're going back to where he is. And so it'll be with him. Where? We're awakening to who you are and awakening to the place that you know the spirit that moves through everything is with you and in you, and you have the power and ability, depending upon your awareness and your consciousness, to use it just as Yahshua did. That is there. So 35. But some may say, how are the dead raised up? And with what body do they come? How foolish. What you sow does not come to life unless it dies. You're sowing one thing, but it's going to come together when you die. So those of you who are alive and remain, you're still going to change. That's why it says there's a change. in a twinkling of an eye, because something is going to take you. Now, those who are already dead, they have already passed from this life, but they are in what you may call Abraham's bosom. If you look in your scriptures, you see this. When all the kings died who were righteous in Israel, it said they went to live with their father. They went to be with their fathers. And it says, and they were buried over here. Two different things. They went to live with their fathers and they were buried over there. Well, those ones who had died, they're in this particular place. They're going to receive the power to do exactly what Yeshua did, because he's the first one. Everyone else died without seeing this promise of what Yeshua actually has gone back to see, okay? But knowing that he can't do his job without that body. So they without us, or Messiah without us, won't start the job. No different than Adam without Eve was not going to do the job. Because it had come to a point that it wasn't satisfactory for that to be. That's why changes were made. And that came to another descension. Now we're going to go back to and ascend back to where we were before. This is a resurrection. This is a redemption. In verse 37, and what you sow, you do not sow the future body, but you bear grain, whether of wheat or of some other grain. Now Yahweh gives the body just as he pleases, and to each of the seed, because you're a seed, he gives its own body. You're a seed. He gives its own body. You all didn't have the same body because you came from different stars. Okay, 1 Corinthians 15. In 38, it says, now Yahweh gives it a body just as he pleases. And to each of the seed, there's not just one seed, but in the earth, he's showing a semblance, if you will. In the earth, there are many seeds that come out of the earth, but he's not talking about earth, he's talking about stars. Star seeds. Okay? And all of us didn't come from the same. But we all are in here looking like we're all man to lift up man. But the stars were not all man. They weren't all man. 1/3 of those stars, it says, was drawn. The morning star, 1/3 of the morning stars were drawn by the tail. And the tail did cast them to the ground. This is where we are now. We're playing the role of man in here. But we didn't come from the same star seed. We didn't come from the same planets. Because after we created all those things, we were doing certain things. But man was already in here, and man fell to a system or a governing body that enslaved those who were created on the 6 days, male and female. And the stars, the morning star came to help fix that. And they all got together like galactic individuals all over because they sang together. They were at one accord anyway. They were living in all different parts of the universe, bringing forth the perpetual transmutation of energy and creating the body of the Father, making it more grand. And they decided to go into this area right here and help this, what was going on here. If you look at the parable of the dishonest manager, you're going to see exactly what happened there. We'll go into that another time. That's what the stars were. 1/3 of the stars were drawn. And they fell to the ground. this is what happened. Well, Yahweh, these are all seeds. These are all star seeds. Yahshua too. So each of the seed, he gives its body. And so when these animals are created, they're created to their kind because all these seeds have their own kind. But now there's some that's living in here with you and me, and we all look like we are man. Abraham, however, was sojourning through here. He understood. He understood what was going on. He wasn't sojourning through here as a man from another place, sojourning as a man in this place. No, he was sojourning as who he was before in the earth, as a man imprisoned in the earth. In prison because of our disobedience. Or in prison because we didn't do the job the way we were supposed to do it. It still happens even today. In verse 39, all flesh is not the same. Just like all stars are not the same. All star seeds are not the same. Yes, we're in here, we're looking the same. But remember, Yahweh created the flesh the 6th day. The flesh of the animals, he created on the 6 days. The 6th day. The flesh of man, male and female, on the 6th day. And they were all supposed to multiply and do well in here. And it was great. Yahweh said it was good. Now something happened that created a problem. Because it was good when he did it. So something happened that it wasn't good. And someone was put in a garden, but there was already a problem in the garden that individual wasn't supposed to deal with. But whatever Yahweh had created was good. Nothing was bad in the garden that was going to take certain things out. But something that later on came and was in that garden and enslaved that which was in here that Yahweh had created, and that was all good in Yahweh's eyes. If you look at the parable of the dishonest manager, you see that part of what Yahshua is talking about, because something came in here and squandered that too. Did not do what it was supposed to do with what you have the authority to do. So it let everything off to itself. And the ruler came and said, hey, what is this I heard about you doing all this stuff with my people, my inheritance, whatever the case is. And he said, I'm going to take your job from you. And so what does it do? It goes into those. He said, I know what I'll do. I'll go to those who would invite me into their homes. Hold your place right there where I'm at. And we're going to go, this maybe Luke 16. If I don't find it, we'll just go back into, I just want to make a point. Okay, Luke 16. It says the parable of the dishonest manager. Now let's pay attention to this real quickly. It says, then he said to his disciples, there was a certain rich man who had a manager, a steward, and he heard accusations that this man was wasting his possessions. His possessions was what was in the earth. So he summoned him and said to him, why is it that I hear this about you? Give me complete account of your management, for you can no longer have this position. You're enslaving everybody in there. I made this all great, and you're messing up. Then the manager said within himself, okay, because now he said you can no longer have this position because he's going to replace him with somebody else who is going to do the right thing and bring it back to the darkness that this dishonest manager messed it up with. Then the manager said within himself, what will I do? My ruler is taking that position from me, and he's going to replace your position with somebody else. Who? How about Adam? And then Adam and Eve. I am unable to dig because it was not a physical being, but it was using those who were physical. I am ashamed to beg. Okay, I know what I will do. That when my position is gone, when Adam takes my position, I will have friends who will welcome me in their houses. And when Eve comes along, I'll do something that Eve will invite me in, and I will be ruling from their houses. I will be ruling Adam and Eve from them following my instructions, doing something that I want them to do. And so here goes. He said, so he summoned one of his ruler's debtors and said to the first, how much do you owe the ruler? He said, 100 baths of oil. So he said to him, take back your acknowledgement of debt for 100 and sit down quickly and write it for 50. Now you're not listening to your debtor now. You're not listening to your ruler. You're listening to this other thing. And it goes on as the next one, and it actually compromised what the ruler said to do. So no longer did those who were in here that was in debt, who was supposed to do everything that the ruler said, they didn't do it anymore. They listened to somebody else who said, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to set up home and set up camp in these individuals right here, and brought them down. Because whoever you yield yourself to be a servant to obey, his servant you are, who you obey. So because they obeyed this one, they fell under the jurisdiction or the servitude of that dishonest manager that still rules upon till today, unless you wake up. This is what Yahshua was trying to show us. But we're going to go back over to 1 Corinthians. And I'm just going to read down to 45 and then 49. And then we're going to probably try to close here until next week. So in verse 39, all flesh is not the same. Men have one flesh, beasts have another flesh, fish have another, and bird have another. But they were all told to be fruitful and multiply. They were all commanded. They had a command according to their kind. But these are stars who did this. They are also heavenly bodies, and there are earthly bodies. But the glory of the heavenly body is one kind, and the glory of the earthly is another. You have an earthly body right now. But when you're resurrected, it's going to depend on what you were before you came in, and you're going to know what body that is, because Yahweh gave that body who you were before as it pleased him, according to a sun, a star that you were before. According to a morning star that you were before you fell. Before you came in here to help and then fell. The sun has one kind of glory, the moon another, the stars another. And one star differs from another star in glory. Just like Yahshua differs than you, differs from me in glory. So also is the resurrection of those who are dead in Messiah, because when they're given a body, they're simply given what they had before. They're going to be redeemed to what they had before. If they're not going to be earthly bodies, there's no need for them to possess an earthly body. If they're going to be as the stars of heaven, then it would make sense for them to have a body as the stars that they had before. Remember, those who follow Messiah wherever he goes, these are the ones who were redeemed from among men. From among men. You're going to be redeemed from among men because you fell amongst men. You fell amongst those who were already here living, doing their thing, and was being ruled or was in captivity to someone else that you came to help, and you fell amongst them also. Because we listened to something else. This is the prodigal son, and he went far, and he went right into that stuff, the riotous stuff. But we're going back, because that's what he did. When did he do it? When he came to himself. When he awoke. When he awoke, he made the trek back, because he had a heavenly body. The body he had before he fell was a heavenly one, just as Yeshua has a heavenly body today. And he came amongst Shaul and came amongst Yochanan as a star. And that's why our scripture tells us in Revelations that he is the bright morning star. We were also of that seed. So here goes now. In verse 42. So also is the resurrection of the dead. The body is sown in corruption, the corruption that you have here in the riotous living. It is raised in incorruption. It is sown in dishonor. The dishonor that we have as the prodigal son that was here eating the husk of stuff with the hogs, and no man cared to give him anything. This was dishonor. We don't know who we are. We have no honor. It is raised in glory. It is sown in weakness. It is raised in power, and you already had the power. It is sown a natural body. A natural body, that's what you have now, a natural body. It is raised a spiritual one. It is raised a spiritual one. But when you're raised, it's a redemption. So you can't redeem what you never had. So you had a different body. There's no redeeming what you never had. So if you're going to be redeemed to a spiritual body, guess what? You already had a spiritual body. You left the third heaven and you came all the way down to a distant land, and now you're philandering around in here, and we don't know nothing. We have to come to our senses, as it says with the prodigal son, and return to our father. Because where our father was, guess what they were? The suns, the stars, creators. You're still creator. The guy who made this house, where do you think he got his power from? And he created. You have to first come into his imagination. That's the first part of it. That's all a part of the Father's power. The Father didn't come down here and put the nail here and put the AC in there and all those things, put the walls up. No. Same thing with the other creations. No different. But the same power that created this house is the same transmutating energy that has put everything together everywhere on different levels, different densities, different dimension, the same spirit. So it is sown a natural body, it is raised a spiritual body. There is a natural body and there is a spiritual body. You have a natural body right now, and in that natural body, there is a spirit body. The physical body is outside of it, and it encases the spiritual body. That's why Shaul said that Yahshua's veil was his flesh. So it is written, here goes guys, listen to this. So it is written, the first Adam, or the first man, became a living being. A living being descended into the abode of where they were living beings. Look here. The last, or the second Adam, he became a life-giving spirit. But that's what he was before. He became a living being. The only way he could become a life-giving spirit is if he ascended back to that. Now let's look at verse 49 here. Verse 49. And just as we have borne the image of the earthly, so we will also bear the image of the heavenly. What's the heavenly? It's a spiritual body. You just got done saying it a couple of verses up. It's a spiritual body. We will also bear it. How? When the resurrection or the redemption of our bodies, the redemption of the bodies that we had was a spiritual one. Is it encased in you right now? You have been imprisoned. The physical vessel that you have, that's all it really is. It's a prison. Sown fig leaves that is put there for us to cover the shame according to quote unquote what Genesis says. But you're imprisoned because we allowed someone to come to us who was going to lose their job, and we were going to take over their job and send everything back to where it was. We allowed those individuals to snooker us and put us under their jurisdiction for a time. And us who did not hold our offices, our abode, we are arrested. We're in prison, in chains of darkness until the day of judgment. The judgment is the time of resurrection. It's not a day, it's a time period. So we're caught. The messengers, where it says Malachim who didn't, these are all just messengers. They're different types of Malachim. A son is also a Malachim to his father. He's a servant, he's a messenger. So all the morning stars are messengers, and we are in prison. We are stuck. Now there's much more to this. And as we go into the upcoming weeks, we're going to see who we are, who we really are, the power that we have, which is the same power, the transmutating energy that's flowing throughout, that you have within yourself, and you have the potential to wake up to it, because it's there. But we have been snookered. Snookered. For a time, not forever. Not forever. Now let's go to Romans 8 real quick. Romans 8. So we're trying to make a point of the body that we had. Okay, Romans 8. Romans 8. And in Romans 8, let's look at verse 19. It says, for the earnest expectation of the creation waits for the revealing of the sons of Yahweh. The sons of Yahweh are the builders. These are the ones who were going to do the very thing at the tent of meetings, that they may receive the Spirit of the Father. The Yod. The creation is waiting for these. Look at verse 21. Because the creation itself, now notice now, the creation is waiting for the sons. So in 21, the creation is not the sons. The creation is waiting for the sons. Because the creation itself will also be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty by the children, or mainly sons of Yahweh. They're waiting for the revealing of the sons of Yahweh, because the sons of Yahweh is going to deliver them, if you will, from the bondage of corruption that the dishonest manager put them under, and then put us under when we came in here to take the dishonest manager's job. So we fell also. So now the creation is waiting for us to come out of there, so we can go back and help the creation. Just as we were before we fell. In verse 22, for we know that the whole creation has been groaning as in the labor of childbirth right up until the present time. And not only they, the creation, but we too, the sons, who have the first fruit of what? The Yod. The Yod. The Spirit, the first fruit. We're first fruit unto Messiah, or the only begotten Son. And after we have been resurrected to what we were before, we're going to help those who remain in here that were not able to be redeemed from among men. They won't be the first fruit. Those who are redeemed from among men are the first fruits unto the Father and unto Messiah. What would they do? They're going to simply go back and help those very same individuals that they were helping when they fell. That's all it's going to be. Let's continue reading this now. So 23. And not only they, but we ourselves who have the first fruits of the Spirit groan inwardly as we wait eagerly for the adoption. Notice this now, guys. The redemption of our bodies. What are the redemption of your bodies? A spiritual body. You're being sown in an earthly body. But you came from another star. You are a star. You are light. The message of the Messiah, or message of Messiah, or the secret of the message, Messiah, is in you. The power of the Father, the Yod, the Spirit, the transmutating energy, as just as it is above, so it is below. It is in you. You and I have been put in prison. We can come out. All we have to do is stop being what they call disobedient and cooperate with that one spirit, the Yod. Because that spirit is moving all through. Yod. We have been living a riotous life. We have to come to ourselves, wake up, because it is time to return. And you're not going to return speaking the every word of Moshe. It's not going to happen. It wasn't supposed to happen that way. But we're going to get into more of this. We have lots and lots to go from here because there's so much on this subject. But for today, we're going to stop here. And may Yahweh truly bless each and every person's understanding